Welcome everyone. We are live for the weekly crypto recap where we go over all of the latest news in crypto from the week. And I'm absolutely delighted to have someone on the show today that I haven't actually had on before. And she's wonderful and you will love her. Desi-Rae, welcome to the show.
Hey, Naomi. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me today on the show.
We are delighted to have you. So Desi-Rae has written a book on privacy coins that she'll be talking about later on, because we're going to be talking about all the latest things with privacy. There's been a report that came out talking about usage of privacy coins. We'll talk about that a little bit. She also has an awesome YouTube channel, a couple of them actually. One of them directly about crypto, so I'll post links and all of that in my description. But this week in crypto, so some pretty interesting things have happened. Welcome to everyone in the chat. I see all of you. So good to have you here. So let's start off by talking about Tron. So this has been a little bit of a controversial thing this week, and I'm wondering where to start here. It's been hard to kind of decipher all of the news that's come out. As we know, Justin Sun is kind of a PR marketing machine and is kind of known for this hype cycle. He's come out with an apology about that sort of thing. You've had him saying that he has kidney stone issues. You had the Warren Buffett lunch that was much anticipated was postponed. So let's start at the top and kind of recap that. And then Desi-Rae, I would love your thoughts on all of this. So to start off with, anyone who doesn't know, so every year, the Glide Foundation, there's like a fundraiser and Warren Buffett auctions off this luncheon with him and the money goes towards the Glide Foundation. And this year it was won by Justin Sun, CEO of Tron. He bid $4.6 million for the lunch. And part of that, he got to invite 7 people to join him in this luncheon. Now, Warren Buffett is a big hater, I should say, of Bitcoin. And he's been very vocal about this. He's called it rat poison squared. He's said that, you know, there's just no hope for it. So it's kind of interesting that Justin Sun has bid on this luncheon. He's succeeded. And then Warren Buffett apparently had to sit through like 2 hours sitting there with his crypto person. And so Justin said that he would invite 7 other thought leaders in the crypto community. He invited CZ, who politely declined. He invited Charlie Lee, the creator of Litecoin. Charlie accepted. He just recently, in fact, this week, he just announced that he had also invited the founder of eToro to join. But then everything got shaken up because he announced that it had to be postponed due to kidney stone issues. And everyone was like, okay, you know, Dustin's sick. And then we find out that 2 articles had been released in China, which have all these allegations about, you know, dodgy stuff happening with Tron. And we'll talk about that a little later, because I probably have a different perspective on all of that. But then people were saying, well, the kidney stone issue was just him laying low and making up excuses because of all of this stuff. You know, after these articles came out in China, everyone was saying, he's not even in San Francisco. He's stuck in China. They won't let him out. He's on like a no travel list. And so then he posted pictures of himself, which apparently were not enough proof. So then he posts a Periscope, a live screen with him and his head of communications, Cliff, and you can clearly see San Francisco in the background. So then all the news outlets that reported on this were like, oh, actually he's in San Fran. But they're saying that once he goes back to mainland China, he won't be allowed to leave again because there's a big investigation. So there's a lot to digest there. Desi-Rae, just to start off with, what are your thoughts? And then I'll kind of give you my take on all of these allegations.
I think it's a bit of a soap opera scenario. I think it's a bit hilarious that the crypto community is following the every move of one guy, and I understand that this is sort of his branding. I don't know much about Tron, except that a lot of people hate how they market. That's how much I know about Tron due to Justin Sun and the kinds of things that he does. I think it would be great if he could change how Warren Buffett thinks about crypto. That'd be great. And if he succeeds in his efforts, then all of this commotion over what he's up to and whether he's sick and whether he's evading Chinese authorities will be worth it.
Right. I have a similar opinion about all of the hype, because every major media outlet was talking about this. You know, people, when they're talking about crypto, they're generally like, "Oh, it's dead again. RIP Bitcoin. It's never come back." Like, that's all we ever hear, and only a few outlets really, you know, go into that. That's been getting better over the years. They're learning. But when this came out, I mean, every major publication, like the Wall Street Journal and Fox and like all of these places, the New York Times, like they're all talking about this luncheon, and it's probably because Warren Buffett is involved. He is traditional finance. So I thought that it was really interesting that everyone's talking about this and they're highlighting the thought leaders in the crypto space. Like, I thought it was a really clever marketing ploy there, not just for crypto space, but obviously Justin's using this for Tron, but there are positive externalities from that people are talking about crypto in general. And obviously, I mean, Tron is just like, they're given a lot of heat. I don't know if anyone watched the Consensus interview this year with Pete Rizzo, and he was grilling him. He was like, "You plagiarized the white paper," kind of going into all of the objections people have about Tron. It was a little awkward to watch, because you're like, "Oh, this is really intense." But he brought up some valid points. Like, you know, there are some, you know, a lot of people don't like Tron. And so it is like interesting to have them at the center of this big PR campaign that could possibly be good for crypto, essentially. But I want to talk about the allegations. So these Chinese outlets that were talking about this, like there was one article that came out, and then the second one came out, and they're major publications in China. And they're talking about, first of all, that his previous company, Payo, they're saying, "Oh, well, you know, people were able to send pornographic images on that." And then another objection was, "Oh, well, people would be using this for money laundering." And then people were saying, "Oh, well, they were allowing people to access illegal gambling." Like, when people start responding and say, "Oh, well, Justin's a scammer because of all of that," like, I'm not going to comment on that side of things. I am going to remark that these are just the points that people bring up about crypto in general, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like anything new. It just seems like China and whoever is controlling these news outlets, they're clearly a mouthpiece for the state, as most media is there, and most media is around most of the world. You know, it seems like they're just talking about crypto in general. Like, the allegations are against online gambling and money laundering and you know, pornography. And so it just, I mean, it doesn't seem like an indictment of Tron in particular for me. It does seem like maybe he just didn't pay off the right officials, and there's, you know, some sort of coordinated attack there. But I mean, I would love your opinion on this. I'm not sure whether my opinion is slightly off what the mainstream is talking about this, but that was my immediate take.
Well,
I'm reading these allegations. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I think, yeah, the video sort of paused there. I think that you're exactly right, that this isn't just about Tron, but about crypto in general. And as you were speaking just now, I was thinking that maybe the reason why so many eyes are on this story is specifically because he's sort of the embodiment of a lot of other crypto projects. It's not just about Tron, but about crypto in general always being associated with these bad things like pornography or illegal things. So I think that might be why this story has gotten so much attention. It's not just about Justin Sun, but it's about what he represents and what he symbolizes to the rest of the crypto community, and also between governments and regulation and traditional finance, and also traditional assets and crypto and creativity and novelty and people who are into this new tech revolution.
Right. And I think that, I mean, the idea that, like, so I think you're right. He's kind of representative, and that's why a lot of people don't want to associate themselves, because they're like, "Oh, you know, there's some dodgy stuff," when they just don't like the product, or they didn't like that the white paper was plagiarized. And Justin, obviously, his remark to that is, "Oh, it was a translation issue." So you can think what you like about that. But I mean, it does seem like there's something going on that has a lot to do with regulators in China. It does seem that he is under fire there. We're not quite sure what's going on on, but he then did give an apology for all of the hype that he usually creates and all of that, and the hype around this luncheon. Like, it does seem like he's upset some powerful people, because these seem like, you know, coordinated articles that came out. They didn't say anything new. It wasn't like, oh, Justin's son, he, you know, scammed these people and owes them $55 billion. It's just the usual stuff, you know. It's just the, oh, crypto facilitates money laundering. Oh, crypto facilitates online gambling. Like, it didn't seem like anything new to me. So then he gives this apology, and he says he sincerely apologizes to the public, media, officials, and regulatory authorities. So already he's talking about officials and regulatory authorities, like he's publicly apologizing to them. So that's interesting. He says that he has, for his over-marketing actions. You know, he's put a lot of money and resources towards highlighting this, right? So he organized this influencers luncheon. I was invited to it, but I didn't end up making it because I had other things going on. But he, and also the luncheon was cancelled, but apparently they still had like a rooftop party, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there was going to be like this full day of tours and press conferences. Like, there was a lot of hype, and there were a lot of media outlets that are talking about this. Like, I thought this was an amazing PR coup. Like, it was a smart move, honestly, whether you like Tron or not. So apparently now he's apologizing for all of that. Then he says, my intention of having a lunch with Buffett was because of my admiration for him and my enthusiasm for charity. It was simple, but also with self-interest to promote the blockchain industry and my project. But my immature, naive, and impulsive conduct with my big mouth have turned into an out of control and failed over-marketing hype and led to a significant series of unexpected consequences. Then he says, during the whole process, I went from being excited to worried, agonized, and then terrified and regretful. It led to a negative influence on the public and also drew concerns, this part's interesting, from regulators who care about me. Again, I want to say I'm sorry. Like, I mean, it seems like he is in some deep shit. Yeah. Regulators are, I don't know what's going on there, but if it's true he's on like a no travel rule in China, then he's upset some people, and now he's made this very apologetic, like, you know, humble, I'm so sorry, regulators, I know you care about me. Like, it just, there's something going on there. We don't quite know what it is yet, but I'm sure things will unfold in the days to come, and we will definitely keep you all updated on that. Now, he's still saying that, oh, it's my illness, oh, it's kidney stones. Maybe his illness is just anxiety in his stomach or something. I'm not sure. Not sure I believe there's an illness, but I understand why he's using that as an excuse to lay low right now. But he also he appeared at the influencers party last night. So that was interesting. Like, if he's, I mean, I don't quite understand his motivations there. So if the whole point of this is to lay low for a little while and say, well, I'm not going to hype this stuff, but then he arrives at an influencers party knowing that a bunch of YouTube influencers are going to be talking about it. And also he's saying he's too ill for a luncheon, but then he arrives at the party. Like, his actions don't quite make sense. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more going on under the surface than we can see from the outside, and maybe it will come out in the future. I personally don't understand, if he's not apologizing for the accusations that were levied against him, then what exactly is he apologizing for? He's almost only doing his job and doing a great job doing what he's doing. So I don't see what he's apologizing for. And there just must be something else going on in the background that we don't know.
Absolutely. So we'll have to keep people updated on all of that. So that is the Justin Sun stuff that is going on. Let's move on to some other things going on. So Bakkt, another controversial and anticipated thing in the crypto sphere. So Bakkt they're launching futures that are going to be settled in actual Bitcoin. And so this has been like a big thing that people have been excited about, because this is like very distinct from something like CME and CBOE, who they settle in cash, but they've had futures for a long time now. And Bakkt just hasn't gotten approval, and it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back, and they're like, oh, we're launching, oh, it's going to be soon. And it keeps getting pushed back and back and back and back. So one thing that's happened, I mean, it seems they still do not have approval, but then they just announced that they have started testing this anyway. And we're not sure what testing means. They haven't talked about what testing they're doing or anything, but it seems that they are sort of beginning this process. So I think what they're waiting on at the moment, they have they self-certified. So this means that let me pull this up here. So you essentially verify for the CFTC that your futures contracts fulfill all of the legal requirements. Now, this means that you can move forward and they can't stop you if you've self-verified. But even though they have gone through this self-verified process, which means that they can move forward, they can't actually launch the product itself until they get what is called a trust company charter through the New York Department of Financial Services. And if they want to operate in New York, they'd also have to apply for a BIT license. I don't know whether they've applied for that one. I presume that they have. But it seems that, I mean, everyone's talking about Bakkt. We've been talking about it for forever. I don't know why, but it seems like a thing people are really, really interested in. And so now they're kind of slowly moving forward. But it's sort of, I mean, it's an indictment of the regulatory framework in America that all these companies just like can't launch their products. And we'll talk about that later when we go to crypto around the world and see what companies are like leaving America at the moment. There's a lot of them because it's really difficult here. So Bakkt, they're trying to work through it and push forward despite all of the delays. But you know, we'll see what happens there. Desi-Rae, what are your thoughts on all this? Have you been following all the Bakkt stuff? Like, is this a product you're interested in?
Not until only I remember, I think it was last year, the price of Bitcoin went down or something bad happened in terms of Bitcoin's price because they announced a delay. So everybody was looking forward to their platform and then it didn't happen. And as someone who has worked somewhat with a crypto project, I'm not anymore. I think trying to put a timeline on when these things would occur is almost futile. So them testing their Bitcoin futures contract, that's great, but we don't actually know when they'll be able to launch their platform due to the regulatory environment. And I don't want to say that the news is meaningless, but it almost doesn't mean anything until it's actually, yes, we're ready, we can do it, and this means something for crypto. Until then, it's ideas and their plans, and it's more than just an idea. However, it's something in process. And so it's good news, but it's not that impactful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree there, and we'll keep following it. I mean, futures contracts that are sold in Bitcoin, I think, is interesting, and it's definitely you know, the ecosystem evolving, which is really cool. So we'll keep following that, and as soon as they actually launch and don't have all of these fake like launches, like I mean, Twitter was talking about, they're like, oh, Bakkt launches. And then in like tiny characters, it's tests. I'm kind of like, okay, here we go again. You know, another Bakkt announcement that we've been going on for forever. I just want to say there is some really awesome people in the chat right now. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Some of my favorite people, and Crystal Rose, who's the CEO of Sense. Wonderful to have you here. I don't think I've ever seen you in a live chat, so super great to have you hanging out. So I want to talk a little bit about this regulatory framework in America. I mentioned it briefly. So if we go to what's happening around the world. So first of all, you have Circle. They just moved a lot of their exchange operations offshore to a Bermuda office. Now, Bermuda is touting itself as we are the new blockchain center. They've been setting up some really interesting regulation for crypto companies that seem to be attracting some good business there. But it seems that Poloniex, which is what Circle is part of, they're moving a lot of their exchange operations, mainly the exchange portion that doesn't deal with US customers, offshore, because it just seems like the regulatory environment is not conducive to, you know, thriving crypto businesses. A lot of them are leaving. So this is one of them. They say that it's due to mounting regulatory pressure. So they're leaving. I mean, we're going to see more and more of this if America keeps going down the path it's going down, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop. I mean, we had another Mnuchin interview recently. We'll talk about that later on, where he again is just talking about, oh, the US dollar, we need to make sure it stays supreme, or we need to make sure that it's the Federal Reserve always. Like, it seems that they're cracking down on crypto for this reason. So this is what Circle said. They say that it took a long time working with the Bermuda government and the Bermuda Money Authority, but that being said, they are now ready to move out there. So they're taking I think 70% of their business out of the US, which, I mean, well done, US. You just lost all of those jobs and everything. So about 70% of their company doesn't deal with US customers, and so they're going to be Bermuda based from now on. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Do you have anything to add on there, Desi-Rae? It's another one bites the dust, right? they leave America.
Right. I think that this is just going to keep occurring ever since New York, which is the regulatory capital of the United States. I currently live here, but I'm thinking of moving. Ever since they did their bit license and a couple of companies fled, that was the canary, in the coal mine. And the US in general, at the federal level, could take lessons from what happened with New York in the past. And I'm sure that the government, I think, only knows how to respond to uncertainty in specific sorts of ways. And that's what they're good at. And so I think that this kind of response of not acting fast enough in response to such an emerging lightning quick in terms of changes, technology, I think that's going to keep happening. And it's going to mean that a lot of companies leave. And then hopefully the US will learn from it. But I don't think anything's going to change. I'm not hopeful for what happens with the US.
I know. I just feel like
companies
I completely agree. You're right about the bit license. Like, they should have learned from that. They should have said, oh, this is what happens when you drive businesses away with draconian regulation. And yet now they're still thinking of doing that on the federal level. And it's all to do with control and power. And I'm sure that they're weighing these business opportunities a lot lower on their list of priorities than the ability to control transactions and collect all that financial data and, be in control of the movement of money internationally, everything. Oil sales all go through New York. They don't want that to change. We're going to talk a little bit later on about some countries that are avoiding sanctions, et cetera, using cryptocurrency. So, I mean, they're worried that they're losing control, and I think they're correct. That is what's happening at the moment. These regulatory agencies that want to control all purchases, people are waking up to the fact they have alternatives and they don't want to be controlled. And it's not up to these people to make choices about people's individual financial transactions, in my opinion. So, I mean, it's interesting just to kind of watch this transfer of wealth out of the country as people are being driven away. You also have ABRA. They just announced that they're going to be restricting services for US users. This is over regulatory issues as well. And they cited regulatory uncertainty and restrictions as the reason for them doing this. So they announced, they said specifically for ABRA users in the United States, is that we have to make some system modifications around our smart contract-based synthetic assets. As a part of this effort, we are migrating any synthetic assets to a native hosted wallet solution. On ABRA, these are defined as anything other than Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash. So synthetic assets are sort of a way for users to get exposure to different types of currencies without actually holding those currencies. You can... They say that, like, the different cryptos, you can make deposits into the app via US-based bank accounts. You can also use different credit cards. You can also use cryptos, and that amount that you deposit, they will follow this synthetic version of kind of like an ETF type thing, where they track the price movements, everything, but you don't actually follow you don't actually hold the crypto itself. But as of the end of August, so August 29th, there are a bunch of things that people will no longer be able to hold, and if anyone fails to liquidate the assets by that time, I think everything gets converted into Bitcoin at that stage, because this is an asset that I think the government has decided is fairly decentralized, and they can't control it as much as all of the others. So I'm glad they've at least realized that. But it's just like another, as I said, another example of someone leaving the United States because it's too difficult for people to operate here. I in some past videos, I've kind of made a joke out of pointing out all the regulatory agencies that people have to deal with here. And I've cited some people in the Senate who are talking about this, and they just list them off, like the CFTC, the SEC, and it goes on and on and on and on. And it's insane that all of these different regulatory bodies are kind of fighting for jurisdiction amongst themselves, and then individuals are meant to navigate that incredibly complex landscape. So it makes sense that people don't want to be a part of that. Have you ever used ABRA, Desi-Rae?
No, I haven't. And thanks for explaining exactly in detail what the synthetic asset was, because I wasn't sure. I was going to ask about that. No, I have not. I have not used ABRA.
Yeah, I
haven't
used it, but I've looked into it, and it seems pretty, like, I was pretty excited about what they were doing, and I was wondering how they were avoiding this regulatory hurdle. But I'm just really sad to see another great company leaving. Bill Barhyde, the CEO, who was actually on my quiz show a few weeks ago at Bitcoin 2019, and he's a lovely, lovely guy. So it's sad to see people clearly getting hurt by these regulations. And it's in turn hurting US customers. People should be fighting about this. People should be saying, we don't want this. We don't want you to be controlling these decisions for us, because it's the consumers that lose out at the end of the day. They lose access to some really great products out there. Yeah. Do you have anything more to add about ABRA? Should we continue around the world?
I agree with what you said. But there was one thing I was going to say, is that it also is a loss of talent from the US, because people will also leave to go operate outside of the US to follow where their intellectual or creative pursuits want to take them when it comes to crypto. So I would just add that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move around the world. So India. Everyone's been talking about what's going on there. They are not treating crypto kindly at the moment. I even saw a bunch of people on Twitter saying that they are going to be fighting this. And, we need to be looking at what's happening all around the world, not just in the United States, because it all affects what we're doing. This is a global currency, and cutting out an entire sector of society because they live between these imaginary boundaries is not good for anyone. And so just keeping an eye on what's going on in the world from a regulatory standpoint, I think, is super important. So in India, they're really coming down on crypto. They have this panel that is proposing fines and jail time for cryptocurrency use, which is crazy. And then at the same time, they're saying like, oh, but we would have an open mind if, let's say, the Reserve Bank of India wanted to create their own cryptocurrency. Yeah, we'd be okay with that. We just don't want any other cryptocurrency. So it's like, clearly it's about power as well. So this is a quote that they have said here. They said, the committee is of the clear view that the private cryptocurrencies should not be allowed. These cryptocurrencies cannot serve the purpose of a currency. The private currencies are inconsistent with the essential functions of money and currency. Hence, private cryptocurrencies cannot replace fiat currencies. Like, it seems like they're trying to convince themselves of that. Anyway, the committee recommends that all private cryptocurrencies, except any cryptocurrency issued by the state, be banned in India. The committee endorses the stand taken by the RBI to eliminate the interface of institutions regulated by the RBI from cryptocurrencies. So, if they don't think that it works as money, then let it fail. Let it exist and let it not work, and people not use it because it doesn't work. Otherwise, if people are wanting it, if there's a demand for it, it's clearly working. It seems like they're more trying to convince themselves than anything. But again, like, it just seems like it's all about control. The Reserve Bank just wants to maintain a monopoly on the money supply, and they won't allow competition there.
It also makes me wonder what happens if someone wants to use crypto that's from another state. So if the US issues its own government sanctioned cryptocurrency, can people in India use it just like they have US dollars? People travel with it around the world, and they can trade and buy things with it. So that makes me question that, is it only Indian issued crypto that can be used in India, or what happens when the state does it? And then I also completely agree that they just want control. And I actually very much enjoy seeing this struggle that is going on when governments really realize what crypto can be, because they have to face the possibility and hope. I'm hopeful that that wins out of competition in terms of money and what money can be for regular people. So I'm very excited to see everything that's going on right now, because money doesn't have to be issued by the state.
Absolutely, and I love that changing paradigm. I think that's the best thing that crypto has introduced, and that's something that I'm excited for Libra to introduce, because people are recognizing that it doesn't, like, government doesn't need to be intrinsically tied to the money supply. We've always thought, oh well, they're the ones that create the money. It wasn't always that way, and we've forgotten that it wasn't always that way. And now you have private money created by, you know, an anonymous person and maintained by a bunch of really awesome people come around, and people say, oh, there's alternative money that wasn't created by the state. And then you have corporations that say, yeah, we're going to release our own money as well. And I think that's a great way to change people's mindset and get them thinking. As you said, government doesn't need to be the one who controls the money supply or is in charge of creating their money supply. We have alternatives out there. And I love that that shift is starting to take place, and it's getting people to think about this. Yeah. So one thing that I do want to mention, so let's go to Iran, another thing happening around the world. So they had have had an interesting relationship with crypto. You've had in the past them talking about, you know, how they should not be subsidizing crypto mining. We know that electricity in Iran is really, really cheap. So a bunch of miners actually moved from China, and they went to Iran because it was just more profitable for them to do so. And it's cheap over there for a variety of different reasons. They have natural resources, and they also subsidize heavily electricity over there. So it got the government talking about, oh, we shouldn't be subsidizing it, but just for crypto. You know, I'm not a fan of price fixing for anything, but now they're singling out entire industries and saying, well, we'll help these ones, but we won't help these ones. So it's, I think it's kind of shedding some light and exposing some of those hypocrisies there. But they have come out and said that they've now legalized crypto mining in Iran. There was some debate about whether they were going to crack down hard on that, but no, they've actually legalized it. But I think that they're going to have different energy costs for people who are mining Bitcoin. So that's interesting, because it's just such a clear favoritism of certain industries. You know, I wonder if they're doing the same thing for other industries there that they don't like. So yeah, I mean, not much more to go into there. There are people in Iran at the moment who are on like sanction lists created by the U.S. Department of Office of Foreign Asset Control, so there's always like this strange relationship with the US and Iran as well. But now within Iran, I don't know what's gonna happen there. But Desi-Rae, do you have anything more to add on that?
Yeah, I do. I was actually about to say this is an example of what a government should be doing in terms of recognizing and making it possible for people to make money and be entrepreneurial in a new industry. But then you were mentioning the subsidies, and then I was like, well, okay, no. So I was almost about to say that, but then I changed my mind. So I think it's good that they're not just outright, you know, imprisoning people just because they're into the crypto space and using cryptocurrencies. But I definitely think it's not good to set it up so that the people get special rates for energy usage, as you were saying. And then something else I was thinking when I read this article was that the 2 Iranian nationals that are on some government list because they were supposedly facilitating payments for ransomware, this brings up why fungibility in terms of crypto is so important, because their defense was that they were not aware of where the funds came from, but now they're in trouble with the government because of it. So I just think it highlights how important it is for you not to know the history of the money that comes into your hands. options.
Absolutely. And the more privacy options we can start supporting, the more wallets that are trying to support more privacy that we can be supporting, I think that the better it is for everyone. You don't want just a small sector of the population using privacy or money that has been scrambled or privacy coins. You kind of want it to be ubiquitous. You want everyone to be using it, because the more people using it, the harder it is to use data chain analytics and track down the pathways, as you mentioned. So yeah, that's that fungibility or lack of fungibility in coins that we kind of have seen since the Department of Treasury has been putting different addresses on blacklists, etc. I mean, it highlights lack of control because it didn't stop transactions to and from these addresses, but it does highlight that you really can single out specific addresses or pathways, and if money has come to or from those, like, you know, start to question, and eventually down the line someone has their ID attached to that and you can kind of trace it back. So just be careful out there, and I hope people realizing how important financial privacy is. So going towards Venezuela, so I mentioned earlier that different countries are using Bitcoin to apparently avoid sanctions. So right now you have Venezuela, they're apparently taking the revenue at airports they're getting from taxes, and they're transferring it into Bitcoin, and that's the way they're getting it offshore. And this is apparently a way that they're avoiding sanctions at the moment. So there's been some investigations done. There was this Spanish newspaper that was looking into this, and on Monday it released this story where it shows that Maduro, they're using this digital wallet app to turn the tax revenue from the domestic airport into Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies. They're transferring them to exchanges in Hong Kong, Hungary, Russia, and China. And then the funds were converted and sent back to Venezuela. So again, it's kind of highlighting how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are being used all around the world for good and for bad, but the underlying importance is that they can't be controlled. So, I mean, this is a really interesting development. Have you looked into this at all, Desi-Rae?
No, not beyond reading this article and just general knowledge of what's happening in Venezuela. But I just agree with what you're saying. That's probably all I'd have to say, that it's a tool and it can be used for good and bad. And it's good, I think, this new tool that we have.
I mean, I love the underlying principle of financial autonomy. So obviously good and bad comes along with that, because bad guys get financial autonomy as well. But, you know, just being a supporter of the underlying principle, I would still be a big supporter of cryptocurrencies. But it is interesting, and it's important to just kind of look at how it's being used across the world. And now back to New York. So we talked about New York earlier, the draconian bit license and Ben Lawsky's ridiculousness that he created there. And so now it's interesting that New York legislature, they have created this crypto task force, and now they have members of the crypto community that they're inviting on to help guide people in legislature about like appropriate regulation and everything. And it makes me think, like, why didn't they do this before they created the bit license? You know, they didn't think, like, I was at the bit license hearings in 2014, and it was just such a sham, because you had these regulators that had, you know, it was just a dog and pony show, right? You had these people who already had in their head what they wanted to happen. They wanted to create this draconian bit license that was really hard to get. And this is what they did, and they drove all crypto business out of New York. And they had all these amazing people testify at that hearing that were talking about how this is a brand new technology, we can't be killing it in its infancy, and how it's so important to watch this innovation grow and not kind of put it in a box before it's had a chance to show what its potential is. Now, you'd think that they might have created a task force to help guide this legislation there. Like they did, Ben Lawsky did put out this, the bit license in advance, and said, oh, we would like some comments from the community. But it's very clear that they didn't take any of this suggestions from the community at all. And it would have been a perfect time to implement a panel, have people from the community guide them on regulations, so they could say, like, no, this is going to drive every business out of New York, this is not going to be good, et cetera, but they didn't. So I don't know how I feel about them now setting up this this task force. I mean, you've had some people in the crypto space a little bit skeptical because of the people on there. I mean, I have no opinion on that side of things. I'm glad that they're setting up this task force. I think any sort of communication like that is a good thing. But I mean, I don't know what good this is going to do unless they're planning on repealing the bid license and having something better. And I haven't heard any rumors of that. But what are your thoughts, Desi-Rae?
I am also skeptical. And when I was reading through this article, I highlighted this bit where it says that Governor Cuomo said that at the time he believed the technology could be used for state elections, record keeping, and real estate transactions. And the unit will also examine the energy costs of crypto mining. I am glad that they're focusing a bit on the positive uses of blockchain technology here. And then when they said that the unit will also examine the energy costs of crypto mining, I think that they might be too narrowly focused on what crypto is and what kinds of consensus exist. And I want to highlight a specific story where I went to a conference in Saratoga Springs in New York, and there were these politicians at a local level discussing how to bring crypto and blockchain into upstate New York and to jump on this new revolution. And I think it might just be like a, what do you call it? Like you stamp that you got something done on the parts of politicians. Because exactly. I remember I specifically stood up and I said something to a politician. I was like, you know, there isn't just proof of work mining. There's also proof of stake, and there are other sort of consensus mechanisms. And they already had in their head, like, they only think of Bitcoin and how that will work. And they were thinking of how to provide cheap electricity. And that's great that they're thinking about crypto, but I think they might not actually have an interest in it beyond maybe satisfying their constituents. And that's great. Like, it's good that they would want to do that. But I'm a little wary of politicians. You know, it's just something to make it look good on their CVs.
I think we can all concur with that. I'm a little bit wary of politicians, the wisest word spoken on this show. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they will hold their finger up to the wind and they'll say, like, well, what do people want? And they generally, a lot of it, as you said, it's just a facade to make it seem like they're doing something, which is what the Libra hearings were, a bunch of people who were shaking their fist angrily against crypto. But it's, I mean, it is sad. And I think that I mean, I'm just loving, I know I always say this, but I love what people like Caitlin Long are doing, where she's actually having these discussions with regulators and she's actually getting stuff done and paving the way to show people what good regulation is in the country. I just think that's so great. And the more discussions we can have with these politicians and convince them that there are important issues that they should be concerned about, not just about like having this facade of, I'm doing something, actually do something and benefit all the people by creating jobs in their states, having companies move there, have great regulation that can protect people's privacy, for example. It gives people financial autonomy and doesn't necessitate a third party to hold their money or make transactions for you, which is what a lot of our banking system does do. So it's just, yeah, I think more of those discussions, the better. Staying in the US, just for one more article. So the IRS is now sending warning letters to US cryptocurrency owners. The warning letters are basically letting people know that they need to start going back and redoing their taxes. They need to refile where appropriate. They need to make amendments. Otherwise, there are going to be severe penalties. Like, they're starting to really crack down on people in the crypto space. So if you're getting these letters, gosh, it was not unexpected at all. You've already had the government clamping down hard on people. Like from 2011, for example, they're going after people and they're like, oh, you bought that Coca-Cola, capital gains, all these things. And it's like, in 2011, people were throwing this stuff around. Like, the first purchase with real world goods was in 2010, right? So this is a brand new tech that no one really understood, and there was no regulatory guidance on it. But now the government is coming down hard and fining people, and it's going to get worse and worse from here. So don't try and avoid your taxes, people, as much as you disagree with them, because unless that's the cross you want to die on, then you pick your battles there, because the IRS is not an agency that's just going to smile and smile and say, I understand, that makes sense. They want their cut. So I would love to know if any of you guys have been receiving letters. If you wanted to send me information about that, and maybe I'll cover it on the show sometime, because I think that this is going to get more and more important and going to be more and more pervasive. Let's, as we close up here, let's go to privacy coins. So Desi-Rae, this is sort of your field of expertise there. There have been a few things that happened this week to do with privacy. First of all, let's look at the report that came out that basically goes over how privacy coins are being used these days and gives us an overview of what this ecosystem looks like.
There was a report. Should I explain, or are you going to go?
Yeah. You go through it.
Okay, so there was a report released earlier this month by Mosaic.io. It was called The State of Privacy Coins. And this article, I don't know if you share your articles in the description or later on.
Yeah,
but the person, yeah, right. One of the people who works at Mosaic.io, apparently they presented this to Coinbase institutional investors. And they did 2 different surveys. A public internet survey. It only had, I think, 236 people, so that's very low. But bear in mind, this is about privacy coins, so a lot of those users don't even want to talk in the first place. And they also did a dark web survey where they were talking to the operators of dark webs about who actually uses, which coins are used, and what people purchase on there. And I would say there are a couple of takeaways. The biggest one for me, I actually go over the whole report in a video on my channel. I haven't released it yet, but I'm probably going to release it today if you want to get details. But the biggest takeaway for me were that privacy coins were not just being used for illegal activities, but also just being used to purchase regular things like furniture and household items. And I think that's a huge win. And another thing was that people mostly used Monero and Zcash. And the project that I used to work with, Particle, they were brought up a bunch, which I thought was very surprising. Like, I would really expect to see mostly Monero on there because they're pretty much the king of privacy coins. And most of the users were in the United States and in Europe as well. And let me see if there were some other specific things. Another thing that was interesting was that a lot of people who use privacy coins specifically want to see privacy coins being used as a store of value. So they're not just trying to have an alternative way to make payments, but they want it to be a replacement for Bitcoin. Now, this was a really small study, so it's not that many people. And it also highlights the need for more research in this space. Mosaic.io, I'd never heard of them before, but they apparently do a lot of this research on data in the crypto space, and I guess they sell that research to companies. I don't know, companies who are new, blockchain startups, that kind of thing. So those were the highlights for me from reading the report. And if you really want to see all the details on there, I would say go and check out the video on my channel, Crypto Ramble. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on that, what I just said?
Well, I think that it's just interesting to follow this trend. And as I mentioned before, I hope to see more and more people delving into the world of privacy coins. I mean, it is harder to use a privacy coin. And it is harder to use something where you're not attaching your identity to something. You need to take a lot of precautions, but I hope people start to realize that it's important to take those precautions, because financial privacy is really, really important. And a lot of people are so happy to use their credit card at every outlet and give away all that data on everything that they're purchasing. And that data, of course, is used by the financial industry and probably sold, and et cetera, et cetera. So I just think that the more we can be looking into this, and more, people like you who are educating people on privacy coins and how to use different coins out there. I mean, it's getting a lot easier. Zcash, they introduced sapling. It just became so much easier to use privacy coins functions there. But there have been a couple of other developments in the privacy coin sphere. So let's go over them briefly. We had ZCoin's Sigma is released, and we also had a activation of RingCT. So walk us through those, Desi-Rae. What's going on there?
Right. So there are different kinds of technologies that exist with privacy coins. So like Monero uses RingCT, Particle also uses RingCT, and Zcash, they use Zero Cash, and they just had their sapling upgrade. But ZCoin uses Zero Coin technology, and Zero Cash and Zero Coin, those two privacy coin technologies, they had something called a trusted setup, where you have to put trust in the developers when you just have to trust that they did everything right, in order to make your transactional sender and receiver information private. So what ZCoin did recently was that they upgraded their protocol to still provide those fungibility benefits, but you no longer have the trusted setup. And something that I talk about in my book is that that's the thing that I don't like about ZeroCoin and Zero Cash and Zero Cash. And the protocols are called ZeroCoin and Zero Cash, and then the coins are called Zcash and ZCoin. So the fact that ZCoin has now made this upgrade is a huge thing, because they're still providing this privacy, which is what I would really like, but they no longer have this huge, massive, in my opinion, liability of a trusted setup. As far as I know, Zcash still has that, but that's just the big news for ZCoin. And then another thing was particle data. They brought RingCT onto mainnet. So Monero uses RingCT, but they have their own specific code base, whereas Particle is based on Bitcoin, and it's actually always up to date, which is a huge technological, it's impressive to do that technologically. And so before, everything was in testnet, but now RingCT, which is Ring Confidential Transactions, that's now on mainnet. So that means that you can send and receive without someone knowing how much you're sending, who you are when you're sending it, and when you're receiving, also you can obfuscate who you are, and then only really the sender and the receiver knows who the other person is, but any third party looking on the chain can't know. So that's just something that happened recently in the privacy.
Wow. That's awesome. So it's great to keep up to date with what's going on in the privacy realm. So you have to come back on when there are more exciting things. You can let us know about all of those. So as we close up here, the last two things I'm going to mention, we've got AT&T. They tried to dismiss a case where there was a lawsuit. I don't know if you guys know Michael Turpin. He's been in the space for a while, runs an advertising marketing company that supports a lot of business in the industry. But he had his SIM card ported and a bunch of money stolen, and then he wrote to AT&T and said, this can't ever happen again. These are the precautions you need to take. You will never port my SIM. Then it happened again. And so he sued AT&T, and they tried to have the case dismissed. They failed to win that dismissal, so that lawsuit is going ahead. So I'm going to be following that. I'll keep you updated with what happens there. And then the final thing I want to mention is Mnuchin. I did a translation. I don't know if anyone saw that, where my Namemoji, the Namemoji that people either love or hate, it's a very divisive character, did a translation of Mnuchin's conference that he held. So Mnuchin is the US Treasury Secretary. He talked about Bitcoin a couple of weeks ago and was just like, oh, US needs to be supreme, yada, yada, yada. We need to protect the US dollar. Bitcoin is bad, etc. So he just did another interview, and he says here, we're going to make sure we have a unified approach, and my guess is that there are going to be more regulations to come out of this agency. So maybe that could be a nice red flag for people about the direction the US is going to be going in. He says that the crypto's future is bleak, and then he finishes it off by saying, I think the dollar is the reserve currency in the world. It's in our interest. We want to maintain it. So, I mean, that basically summarizes what all these government organizations have in their mind as they're setting up all this regulation. It is about power and control and making sure they continue to have a monopoly on the money supply. So that is the direction we're going to be going in. Their heads are not focused around jobs or prosperity or any of that right now. It's very much this parochial view. That being said, you have different regulators in different states that are maybe looking to what their constituents want. And so write to your local people in office. Let them know how you feel. Be vocal about this so that they know that you are someone that they need to represent. There are some good people in there, as we saw from the Libra hearings, and I'm going to be releasing a video that goes through all of the politicians who are actually fairly positive about crypto, so you can know who they are and reach out to them, get them excited, know that, you know, them supporting crypto publicly like that, it's in their interest. They are going to get support from that. So that wraps up everything here. I wanted to say a huge thank you to Exciting World Cryptos, aka JR. So check out his YouTube channel if you haven't already. He says, rules, rules, and rules. This is the flavor of the week and will continue to be the main focus for anything in crypto for a long, long time. Absolutely agree, JR. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate your support. So I mean, that's the thing with crypto is it does challenge power. It challenges the government's monopoly on the money supply. It gives people choice, and they don't necessarily want that. So that's what crypto is about. It's about giving people choice. So I think you're absolutely right, JR. We're going to see a big battle coming up. We've just seen it get started. It's really starting to amplify with Libra getting into the market now, but we'll have to wait and see what happens, and make sure that you're fighting the battle on all fronts there, and doing as much as you can to help the scene. It doesn't matter if you could say like, oh, I'm just going to leave America. You know, the long arm of the American government, it reaches very far. So a lot of places have realized this. A lot of CEOs that I've spoken to recently have said, you know, if they could go back and change things, they wouldn't have set up their company in Switzerland, for example. They would have just set it up in America because they realized it didn't make any difference. The US regulated them anyway, and it would have been easier for them to just be, you know, close to home. So I think we're going to see this heating up. We'll have to see what happens there. But huge thank you to everyone who has been in the chat here. Desi-Rae, huge thank you to you for being on the show. This was your first time on the show, but I hope that it's the first of many. It was great to have you here.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Huge thank you to JR for the super chat. I really appreciate that. And really appreciate all the people who've been hanging out on this wonderful Friday afternoon, or perhaps Saturday morning, depending on where you are in the world. So huge thank you for spending this time with us. Go and enjoy your weekend. Go and have a wonderful time. Let me know what you get up to. If there's ever anything that you want me to cover on the show, just send me a tweet. I'm always open to suggestions. And if you have people that you recommend to come on the show, always open for suggestions there too. So just send me a message. If you haven't liked the video, thank you to the people who have. To the one person that disliked the video, just send me a tweet. Let me know what I can do better. I'm here to serve you. I did notice that dislike was there before the video started though, so I'm not sure that you're too open for that dialogue, but I'm happy to start it anyway. But thank you to everyone for supporting the channel. This enables me to keep it going when you share the videos, when you like them, etc. YouTube likes me better when you do that, so I appreciate your support. Go have a wonderful weekend. See you, everyone. See you, Desi-Rae. See you, chat people.
Bye.
Bye.